not going to reveal who my opponent is. The UFC will do that in due course. We'll find out soon enough, won't we?
With Gable Stevenson, so far International Fight Week is really like sometimes it doesn't quite hit. This one,
if everything goes according to plan,
yeah. If everything goes according to plan, do you guys like that fight?
Love that fight, banger.
Okay, tell me why, GC. You like it. You like it. Why?
Yeah, I mean, Paddy, as we've seen in recent fights, like he's willing to go out on his shield. Like even against Justin Gaethje, like he took an absolute beating. He's incredibly hard to finish. We haven't seen it happen to him. And then BSD is a dude that is always hunting for violence, always looking for a finish. It just has all the makings of an incredibly exciting fight.
Okay. If you're
the leak just hit the internet, and the MMA world is in a state of absolute meltdown. Paddy the Baddy is stepping back into the octagon, but it's not the tune-up fight everyone expected for the UFC's Golden Boy. Instead, he's been matched with a literal human meat grinder that has even Joe Rogan questioning the sanity of the matchmakers. This isn't just a step up in competition, it is a calculated gamble that feels like career-ending madness. The name on the contract has sent shockwaves through the industry because nobody thought the UFC would actually pull the trigger on this specific slaughter.
This is for GC again. If you're Team Paddy, are you signing up for this? After the damage you absorbed in January, is this the guy you want to come back against? I'm surprised. I love the fight. You can make a case that this is his toughest test in the UFC so far, right? You can make that case. Right or wrong?
Yeah, I mean, the way Justin Gaethje looked that night,
But who was predicting that?
New York Rick actually was.
Fair point, but like,
but yeah, he was a big.
Did you not think that after that fight, the level will go down? I don't think there's a massive gap between BSD and Justin Gaethje right now.
There's not, and like the way you lose to BSD, if you do lose, you're
Benoit Saint Denis is the name that has everyone's jaw on the floor right now. We are talking about a man who treats every fight like a sanctioned war and doesn't know how to take a single step backward. For Paddy Pimblett, who is still recovering from the physical toll of his last outing, this choice of opponent feels less like a promotion and more like an execution. Rogan has seen it all, but even he knows that putting a charismatic star like Paddy against a violent machine like BSD is a move that defies every rule of fighter management. The risk isn't just a loss, it is the permanent destruction of a massive brand.
Out of the question to win this fight, even though I do believe Benoit is going to be the favorite, I believe Benoit has the advantage. I don't mind this for Paddy Pimblett. I actually think this is okay. I think he can find a way to win this fight.
I think it's a winnable fight. Who do you think would be the favorite?
Oh, BSD for sure.
I think with BSD's run lately and the way that Paddy looked against Gaethje, he'll be a favorite. I don't think big time, no.
First time Paddy would be an underdog in a UFC fight? Because he wasn't the dog against Justin, right?
Was he a dog to Chandler or was he a favorite?
Nah,
I think he was a big favorite, right?
He was?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's never been an underdog.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would make sense.
I mean, I love the fight. I just thought if you're trying to build him back up, and there's nothing wrong with that, by the way. If you're trying to build him back up, I thought maybe they would go with someone who is,
Let's be real about what happened in Paddy's last fight against Tony Ferguson. Even though he walked away with the win, he looked like he had been through a blender by the final bell. He absorbed a level of punishment that usually requires a long layoff and a carefully selected return fight to rebuild his confidence. Instead, the UFC is tossing him right back into the fire against a guy who specializes in sustained, soul-crushing violence. It is a strategic bombshell that has analysts scratching their heads and fans holding their breath. This move isn't about building a legacy. It's a high-stakes poker game with a career as the pot.
I don't know who the guy is off the top of my head.
I know who the guy is.
Tell me.
Maybe it's controversial. He should have been fighting Conor, if I'm being honest.
Same card.
This is the only thing you can do with Conor McGregor that builds. Love Max Holloway, have no problem with Max Holloway versus Conor McGregor. Makes sense as a fight. But a win by Max Holloway does not propel him to any new level, change anything for Max Holloway. Like, he'll continue to be a fan favorite, somebody everybody loves, but it could have done wonders for somebody like Paddy Pimblett. That would have been the fight I would have made.
Benoit Saint Denis isn't just another ranked lightweight. He is a force of nature that thrives in absolute chaos. His recent performances have shown a warrior's mentality that is rarely seen even at the highest levels of the sport. He is the kind of fighter who will eat 3 heavy shots just to land one devastating blow that breaks his opponent's will. For a fighter like Paddy, who relies heavily on his chin and his charisma to carry him through tough spots, this is the ultimate nightmare matchup. This isn't a stylistic puzzle to solve. It is a brutal test of durability that most fighters would avoid at all costs.
I thought maybe you were going to say like a Moicano, a Dan Hooker, someone like that.
Hooker versus Paddy had some heat to it. I wouldn't have mind that either.
A lot of heat, a lot of animosity. But I love this. I think this is fantastic.
Yeah, this is a good fight, and not officially announced, but both alluding to a fight, and really, I mean, Paddy going out there. When you become a certain type of star in the UFC, you could go out there and announce your own fights. I wish they all would announce their own fights, if I'm being 100% honest. They all deserve.
The timing of this leak is what makes it truly suspicious and arguably dangerous for the Scouse superstar. International Fight Week is the biggest stage in the sport, and the pressure to deliver a banger of a card is immense. It feels like the UFC is prioritizing a short-term spectacle over the long-term health and success of one of their most popular assets. If you're on Team Paddy, you have to be looking at this contract and wondering if the promotion has lost its mind. You don't send your most marketable rising star into a wood chipper just to fill a slot on a McGregor undercard, unless you're ready to see him fail. For the first time in his entire UFC career, Paddy Pimblett is expected to walk into the cage as a massive underdog. This is a massive shift in the narrative that has defined his rise to fame so far. Up until now, he's been the favorite, the guy expected to win, and the fighter the promotion has nurtured with favorable matchups. But against BSD, the math simply doesn't add up in his favor. This underdog status isn't just a betting line. It's a psychological weight that could change how he approaches the fight entirely. He's no longer the hunter, he is the prey in a very public and very dangerous hunt. People are calling this a banger, and on paper they aren't wrong because the violence will be off the charts. But we have to look at the brutal truth of what this does to a fighter's shelf life. Every time you step into a cage with a guy like Saint Denis, you leave a piece of yourself behind. Paddy has already shown that he is willing to go out on his shield, but how many shields does he have left? Joe Rogan often talks about the toll these wars take on the human brain and body, and this matchup seems designed to maximize that toll. It's a move that fundamentally challenges the very essence of fighter safety. There were so many other options on the table that would have made more sense for Paddy's career progression. Names like Renato Moicano or Dan Hooker were floating around, and both of those fights had built-in heat and animosity. Those would have been high-profile contests that allowed Paddy to showcase his skills without facing an immediate existential threat. Instead, those logical steps were bypassed for a leap into the abyss. It makes you wonder if the UFC is trying to see if Paddy is truly the real deal, or if they are simply trying to cash out on his hype before the inevitable ceiling is hit. The McGregor factor cannot be ignored in this equation because the UFC is desperate to make International Fight Week a historic event. There were even whispers that Paddy should have been the one facing Conor himself. Think about the magnitude of that moment compared to this. A win over a version of McGregor who hasn't been in his prime would have catapulted Paddy into a different stratosphere of global fame. It would have been the ultimate passing of the torch. But instead of that astronomical reward, he's taking a massive risk against a guy who offers a fraction of the fame, but double the danger. Benoit Saint Denis is coming off a loss himself, but that loss was a legendary war against Dustin Poirier, where he showed he belongs with the elite. He didn't lose because he lacked skill, he lost because he ran into a former champion in a high-level chess match. Putting Paddy in there with a guy who just pushed Poirier to the limit is an insane jump in difficulty. It's like skipping 3 grades in school and being told to take a PhD exam. The gap between the guys Paddy has beaten and the level BSD operates at is a canyon that many think the Scouser simply cannot bridge right now. One of the most fascinating aspects of this leak is that Paddy seems to be the one leaning into it. In the world of the UFC, only the biggest stars get to effectively announce their own fights or hint at them before the promotion goes public. This shows the massive power Paddy holds within the company, but it also shows a potential lack of guidance from his inner circle. A smart manager would be looking at the BSD fight and screaming for a different path. But Paddy is a gamer and a gangster at heart, and he's decided to bet it all on black. It's a move that is either legendary or catastrophic. Rogan has been vocal in the past about how the UFC builds stars, and he knows that the promotion can be cold-blooded when it comes to their assets. We've seen it happen before where a popular fighter is fed to a shark just to build the shark's name. Is that what's happening here? Is Benoit Saint Denis being set up to be the next big thing at the expense of the UK's favorite son? If BSD goes out there and dismantles Paddy in front of a global audience, the Paddy Pimblett brand might never recover. The casual fans who love his persona will vanish the moment the aura of invincibility is shattered. Let's look at the physical recovery aspect, because this is where the concern turns into genuine fear. Paddy took a beating in January, and stepping back into a camp for a guy like BSD just a few months later is asking for trouble. The body needs time to heal from the micro-trauma of a 15-minute war, and the mind needs time to reset. By rushing back for a summer card, Paddy is denying himself the evolution he needs to actually beat top-tier talent. This isn't just about bravery, it's about biology. You cannot out-tough a lack of recovery, and that is exactly what the UFC is asking him to do. The atmosphere surrounding this reveal is tense because it feels like a turning point for the lightweight division. For years, there have been questions about whether Paddy is a legitimate contender or just a very talented entertainer. This fight will answer that question once and for all with zero ambiguity. If he survives the storm and finds a way to win, he becomes an instant legend and a title threat. But the odds are stacked so heavily against him that it feels like the promotion is almost rooting for the chaos. They want the headline, and they don't seem to care who gets hurt in the process. There is a certain irony in the fact that Max Holloway was mentioned as a potential opponent for Conor, while Paddy gets the BSD treatment. Max is a Hall of Famer who has nothing left to prove, yet he gets the high-reward money fights. Meanwhile, the rising star who actually needs the boost is being sent into a meat grinder. It exposes a massive flaw in how the UFC views its marketable assets. Are they investments to be nurtured or just commodities to be exploited until they break? The choice of Saint Denis suggests the latter, and that should be a massive red flag for any young fighter. Analysts are already dissecting the tape, and the consensus is terrifying for Paddy fans. BSD's wrestling and relentless pressure are exactly the kind of tools that have given Paddy trouble in the past. If he couldn't easily handle a late-career Tony Ferguson, how is he going to deal with a prime, hungry, and violent Frenchman who is looking to make a statement? The stylistic mismatch is so glaring that it almost feels intentional. It's as if the matchmakers looked for the one guy in the top 15 who would be the most difficult for Paddy to beat, and then handed him the pen to sign the paper. Despite all the doom and gloom, there is a small segment of the MMA community that believes this is exactly what Paddy needs. They argue that he has been coasting on hype for too long, and that a fight of this magnitude will force him to level up or exit the spotlight. It's a trial by fire that will reveal his true character, but even those people have to admit that the risk-to-reward ratio is completely out of whack. You don't usually test a fighter's character by putting them in a cage with a man who wants to take their head home. This is beyond a test. It's a modern-day gladiatorial sacrifice. The buzz around International Fight Week is already reaching a fever pitch, and this leak has only added fuel to the fire. People are going to tune in specifically to see if the Baddy can pull off the impossible. The UFC knows this. They know that even if Paddy loses, the spectacle of him fighting a guy like BSD will generate millions in revenue and social media engagement. They are banking on the fact that fans love a train wreck just as much as they love a success story. It's a cynical way to run a business, but in the world of prize fighting, the bottom line often overrides athlete health. We also have to consider the psychological impact on Benoit Saint Denis. He is coming into this fight with everything to gain and nothing to lose. He knows that beating Paddy Pimblett makes him a household name overnight. He is going to be more dangerous and more focused than we have ever seen him. For Paddy, he is fighting to protect everything he has built over the last few years. One mistake, one slip in concentration, and the entire empire comes crashing down. The pressure on his shoulders right now must be suffocating, and facing a man who thrives on pressure is a recipe for disaster. Joe Rogan has often talked about the level in the UFC, and how some fighters simply hit a wall when they face the elite. We are about to find out if Paddy has hit that wall. The problem is that hitting the wall against a guy like BSD isn't a gentle experience. It's a collision that leaves lasting damage. If Paddy's chin has been compromised by his recent wars, this fight could be the one that ends his ability to compete at a high level entirely. We've seen it happen to countless legends who took one hard fight too many, and seeing it happen to a guy in his 20s would be a total tragedy. There is a whisper in the industry that this matchup was a take-it-or-leave-it offer from the UFC hierarchy. While Paddy acts like he has all the power, the reality is that the promotion always holds the final card. If they wanted him on the McGregor card, they likely demanded a high-profile, high-violence opponent to justify his placement. Paddy, being the gamer that he is, probably didn't hesitate to say yes, but his bravery might be his downfall. There is a fine line between being a gangster and being reckless with your own future, and it feels like that line was crossed today. As we get closer to the official announcement, the tension is only going to grow. The fans are divided between those who want to see Paddy prove his worth and those who are genuinely concerned for his safety. This isn't just about sport anymore. It's about the ethics of matchmaking and the value of a human being's career. The UFC has set the stage for a moment that will define their entire season, but the cost of that moment might be the career of their biggest UK star. Everyone is holding their breath because we all know that once that cage door closes, there is no turning back. Ultimately, the leak of Benoit Saint Denis as Paddy Pimblett's next opponent serves as a stark reminder of the brutal nature of the fight game. It's a world where narratives are written in blood and reputations can be dismantled in seconds. Whether this is a stroke of matchmaking genius or a catastrophic failure of management remains to be seen, but one thing is certain, the world will be watching. Paddy has chosen the hardest path possible, and if he emerges on the other side, he will be a god in the eyes of the fans. If he doesn't, we will be left wondering what could have been.